Next slide is I always recommend your place because you have some home field advantage and can control the environment. Not everyone has that advantage. Some guys say fuck it and fuck in an alley or their car. Doesn't really matter as long as it consistently works. I don't want a girl to know where I live. And that's completely fine. There are dudes that are out there like they're weird guys. They have weird, feelings of control, and it makes them uncomfortable. And or their place is a wreck. I mean, which doesn't really matter, but they just simply don't want girls back to their place. Because again, I always recommend best practices. You meet up for drinks. You meet up in the evening. You go to a darker lounge where you can talk. You have things within walking distance of your place. Again, these are all best practices, but it's not always feasible. And a lot of times the guys, they may live with their parents, or they may live out of their car, or, their house is covered in dog hair. There could be any reason for this because again, girls are going to eventually figure out where you live. But for whatever reason, if you don't have the ability or the desire to take her back to your place, and you need to know where you're going to take this girl before you even go out, where you're going to close the deal at. It's super important to have your plan all the way through to the final, putting her into an Uber and sending her home. I always recommend home field advantage because you can control the environment. Again, I've lost track of the number of guys that go, yeah, she said, hey, why don't we come back to my place? And we got there and her roommate was up and they started talking. Then they got into an argument, or she got there and then her roommate was there and she said, hey, I can't do this because, I don't look like a slut. And so you have to know that, or they show up and there's like a party going on, so they don't have any privacy. But having control over your final destination, again, sometimes you go out to a party and you hook up with some chick and you don't have the whole thing planned out. But when you have that ability, you need to take advantage of that so it's smooth, and you'll have a higher close rate too. You're not leaving things to chance. But if you don't always have the advantage of taking them back to your place, you've got your car, you can say, I'm going to fuck her in this alley. As long as you have a plan, you will be steps ahead of anybody that's just winging it and hoping for the best. And, just like I tell guys, like worst case scenario, you're in the city, you can use like a stairwell for like parking garages. Always check for cameras. Make sure you're not going to be like broadcast eventually somewhere or get busted. Things you don't need. Again, cops used to, at one point, it was very much a, hey, don't do that anymore. But nowadays, you never know how far they'll want to take it. And you have all kinds of problems. So just know, always be aware of your surroundings. If you do have to use something that's impromptu, but have a plan. And a car will work. Some guys say fuck in the alley or their car, and it doesn't really matter as long as you have consistent close rates and you're comfortable with it. And girls are far less conscious or self-conscious about where they're at than you think they will. You're like, oh, she would never fuck me in an alley. And yes, they will. All you got to do is try, and you'll be surprised at the number of girls that will fuck you in a public alley while people are walking by 10 feet away. They find it exciting. So just know, but you can't rely on that. She's like, I don't want to keep fucking in an alley. You're going to eventually have to find someplace a little bit more suited to sticking around. So always recommend, at the end of the day, best practices, use your place. Have it within walking distance of your last venue. That's ideal. And for whatever, if you can't go home or to your place and you have to rely on others, always have a plan. And the last place is her place. Because again, you're giving over like too much control. Because it's not much, like controlling. It's that you don't have any control over who shows up, the dog vomited on the bed. Just there's always something when you show up at some chick's house, because remember, they kind of live in chaos. So you never know, and you want to have control over your environment so you can close more. It's a better experience for her too. So that's how you deal with where to bang. So I'm not sure.